Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jacob. I'm really happy to be here again. I really appreciate the invite.
The House of Representatives conducted an important vote yesterday, passing a resolution that would deny Trump the ability to conduct further strikes against Iran. And a number of Republicans also joined the Democrats on this resolution. What is your take on the status of the American war against Iran?
I've been a supporter of taking military action against Iran. Having said that, so I support what President Trump is trying to do in Iran. I think it's a historic opportunity. We should not go wobbly at this moment. It would be a historic achievement if 6 months from today we play this tape back and we look and say there's a change in the nature of the regime of Venezuela, there's a change in the nature of regime of Cuba, and there's a change in the nature of regime of Iran. This would be foreign policy historic change. I think many folks, so having said that, so I'm very supportive of it. It's tricky and complicated and risky, but it's worth the risk. Having said that, since the beginning, the military actions in Iran have been not necessarily as popular with the American broadly in the American public, though I think it remains popular with mainly most Republicans. I'm guessing a small number of Republicans, my understanding was a small number of Republicans joined the Democrats in this vote. So I think you've noticed that President Trump paused after, I think it was like a 60-day period because of sort of the legislative arrangements around you can take military action up to 60 days without seeking some sort of a congressional action of some kind. I think this goes back to the 1970s and the War Powers Act that was to try and constrain presidential action in foreign policy. So I think they've come up with some language to say, well, we've ceased hostilities briefly so they could, in essence, restart the clock down the roads. But I do think the fact that you had this vote signals that there are some Republicans getting cold feet, that Democrats are using this to, and I think it's unfortunate because it's the sort of thing where we should be supporting our men and women in harm's way. And so I don't want to say they're necessarily doing this as a political gesture, but it certainly seems as if it's a political gesture. But the fact that they were able to muster those votes speaks to that they are channeling concerns about the situation in the Middle East. So I suspect I'm in the minority, but I believe that President Trump has been right to pursue this course.
Now, a new Fox News poll that was released today indicates that Sherrod Brown, who is the Democratic challenger against Republican John Husted in the state of Ohio, is 8 points ahead. Does that not suggest that the war is taking a toll on Republican political fortunes as the party heads into the midterms?
Well, I think having been to Ohio and also knowing that Sherrod Brown used to represent the great state of Ohio for more than 30 years. I think he was a 4 or 5 term senator from Ohio. So it's very, very high name recognition in Ohio. And President Trump is not on the ballot in the 2026 midterms. And the Republican Senator John Husted, I don't know if it's pronounced Husted or Husted, is not as well known. So I think some of it may be name recognition, but the fact and I'd want to see other polls to see where former Senator Sherrod Brown is. Excuse me. But what I would say is it could be a function of several things. I don't believe one poll. I'd want to see other polls. Some of it may be a function of former Senator Brown's very strong name recognition. Some of it may be a function of the price of gasoline. Some of it may be foreign policy related, though I think most elections in America, so folks like you and me who pay attention to foreign policy issues, it does matter, especially when there's an unpopular war or an unpopular military action. At the same time, I think we should mourn every person who has died in this conflict, but the relative very small number of folks who unfortunately had to give their life for this important cause, I'm not quite sure it's the primary driver of what's happening in Ohio. I would have a hard time believing that, and I would have to look at the polls and say, what are the top 3 issues? And I'm going to bet it's the price of food and fuel, crime, and migration.
Let's talk about.
But could be.
Let's talk about fuel prices, because Exxon has stated that should the war continue in its current status, the price of oil could go to $160 a barrel.
And right now it's about 100 or 90.
Do you think that is politically sustainable?
So I think that is a huge. My strong hope is that it does not happen. Of course, and for any president, we shouldn't wish it for the American people, because it's an undue hardship on the American people, especially workers and the poor are the ones that, like working class folks, are the ones that are going to take it on the chin harder than anybody else. It's a regressive tax. So there's discussions about going through the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and other resources, and what happens if.
Though the reserve has been drained.
Has been almost drained, yeah. And I know that I believe that some of it was drained during President Biden's administration, and there were some calls by Republicans at the time that perhaps this wasn't the moment to drain the reserves, and so I think as a result, we don't have the reserves that we might have had if that hadn't happened. But I think we'll know more. I think if there is a return to hostilities in Iran, there's the possibility that the Iranians hit the Gulf energy production assets. And so the sorts of numbers that the energy executive was talking about is not outside of the realm of possibility. It's possible, but one would hope that that doesn't happen.